The greatest trap in the world of human achievement is the intoxicating illusion of past victory. When an individual rises to the top of an organization, commands a massive department, or achieves global recognition, they naturally fall victim to a deep, dangerous psychological paradox. They look at their current status and conclude that because they are incredibly successful, every single one of their behavioral habits, quirks, and attitudes must be precisely what caused that success. They become blind to the reality that they may have succeeded not because of certain toxic behaviors, but entirely in spite of them. Marshall Goldsmith shatters this corporate ego, introducing a brutal truth that every ambitious leader must eventually confront. The exact strategies, relentless drives, and stubborn mentalities that were required to get you here to your current position will actively prevent you from getting there to the next level of global leadership. Success can easily become a terrible teacher, reinforcing bad behavior by confusing a random positive outcome with an elite personal performance. When a driven leader achieves a corporate goal while acting as a hyper-aggressive, unyielding bully, their brain registers a false cause and effect relationship. They mistakenly believe that their aggressive bullying was the secret ingredient that unlocked the victory. They completely overlook the reality that their team might have worked twice as hard out of pure terror, or that the market forces were so overwhelmingly favorable that a rock could have turned a profit. As a result, these high achievers become intensely resistant to change, locking themselves into a fortress of self-reinforcing arrogance. When someone attempts to offer constructive criticism, the leader's ego automatically dismisses the feedback, reasoning that a person with a smaller bank account or a lower title has absolutely no right to judge a proven winner. To unlock the next level of human potential, you must lift the veil on the hidden behavioral flaws that poison corporate cultures and alienate top-tier talent. Goldsmith details 20 specific relational blind spots that plague successful individuals. Behaviors that are almost never about a lack of technical intelligence, but are entirely about an overabundance of unchecked ego. The most destructive of these flaws is the obsessive, non-negotiable need to win at all costs, in every conceivable situation. A hyper-successful person does not just want to win the major corporate contract, they want to win a random argument about the best route to the airport, dominate a casual dinner conversation, and prove that their opinion on a movie is the only correct one. This toxic drive transforms every daily human interaction into a zero-sum battlefield, slowly draining the psychological safety and goodwill of everyone who works beneath them. Closely tied to this destructive competitive urge is the habit of adding too much value to every single discussion. Imagine a brilliant young executive walking into the CEO's office with an exceptional, fully formed marketing strategy. The CEO listens intently, agrees that the idea is magnificent, but then says, "That is great, let's also add this small tweak to the third phase." The CEO believes they are helping, but they have actually committed a major leadership error. By adding their small percentage of value to the plan, they have effectively stripped the young executive of their absolute ownership of the project. The plan is no longer the executive's creation, it is now the boss's mandate. The executive's internal motivation to execute the strategy drops instantly, all because the leader could not resist the urge to prove that they are still the smartest person in the room. When you combine this with the habits of passing harsh judgment on others, making destructive comments, starting sentences with words like no, but, or however, and withholding well-deserved praise out of primitive insecurity, you create a silent corporate environment where innovation suffocates under the crushing weight of a leader's unmanaged ego. Recognizing your behavioral flaws is a monumental psychological breakthrough, but it is entirely useless unless you have the courage to launch a visible, practical transformation in the real world. For a high achiever whose entire identity is anchored to being right, flawless, and superior, taking the first step toward behavioral redemption can feel like an absolute execution of the ego. Marshall Goldsmith explains that the most difficult, yet most instantly transformative tool available to a stalled leader is the simple, unconditional act of a sincere apology. You must stand before your team, your peers, or your family, look them in the eye, and openly confess the exact ways your behavior has damaged their trust, without offering a single excuse, historical justification, or defensive explanation. An elite corporate apology requires you to completely suppress the instinct to explain why you acted the way you did. The moment you say, "I am incredibly sorry for losing my temper in the meeting, but I was under immense pressure from the board," you have completely neutralized the apology. You have shifted the blame away from your character and placed it onto external circumstances, proving to your team that you are not genuinely accountable for your actions. A true leader walks into the room, states exactly what they did wrong, expresses sincere regret for the impact it had on the group, and says nothing else. The silence that follows a raw, unyielding apology is where trust begins to regenerate. It completely disarms your critics, shatters the political tension within the organization, and signals to the entire workforce that the leader is finally ready to prioritize the health of the institution over the fragility of their own pride. Once the air has been thoroughly cleared by an apology, you must immediately begin a highly strategic internal campaign that Goldsmith calls advertising your changes. Many leaders mistakenly believe that if they quietly work on their behavior behind closed doors, people will naturally notice their improvement and automatically forgive their past transgressions. This is a complete cognitive illusion. Human beings are deeply conservative processors of information. Once your team has labeled you as a stubborn, unlistening micromanager, their brains will interpret all your future actions through that exact negative lens. If you sit quietly in a meeting trying to practice deep listening, they will not conclude that you are improving. They will assume you are angry, bored, plotting a firing, or mentally checked out. To break this perceptual inertia, you must explicitly tell everyone around you exactly what habits you are trying to destroy and exactly what changes you are attempting to implement. You must openly announce to your colleagues that you have recognized your habit of cutting people off in conversations, and that you are actively working to become a more patient listener. By advertising your behavioral goals, you achieve two massive strategic advantages simultaneously. First, you recruit your entire team as active, conscious allies in your personal development, giving them a safe mandate to hold you accountable in real time. Second, you force their brains to actively look for your positive behavioral changes, ensuring that every time you successfully hold your tongue, their perception of your leadership style begins to shift in a positive direction. You cannot alter your reputation in secret. You must market your personal growth with the exact same focus and clarity that you use to launch a major product into the consumer marketplace. To sustain a profound personal transformation over a multi-year corporate journey, a leader must completely rebuild the channels through which they gather, process, and absorb information from the surrounding environment. This requires mastering the discipline of pure listening, a skill that is systematically destroyed by the fast-paced, high-pressure demands of executive life. Most high achievers do not actually listen to the words being spoken across the table. Instead, they engage in competitive listening, using the time while the other person is speaking to silently formulate their next brilliant counter-argument, map out their response, or calculate how to dismiss the speaker's ideas. They treat dialogue as a transaction to be won rather than an opportunity to expand their perspective. Goldsmith introduces an elegant, highly disruptive protocol for handling all forms of input, criticism, and advice. You must train your brain to say absolutely nothing other than thank you. When an employee walks into your office and delivers a piece of raw, uncomfortable feedback, telling you that your constant interruptions are making the team feel completely disempowered, your primitive instinct is to defend your honor, explain your strategic intent, or point out their own performance flaws. You must ruthlessly suppress this reaction. You must look at the individual, breathe deeply, and say, "Thank you for your honesty." You do not argue, you do not validate the criticism immediately, and you certainly do not punish the speaker. You simply treat the feedback as a neutral piece of data, a free gift of information that tells you exactly how you are being perceived by the people you are supposed to lead. This discipline allows you to construct a highly functional feedback loop, which is the only reliable method to uncover the hidden behavioral liabilities that are keeping you stuck beneath your professional glass ceiling. When you are the boss, people will naturally lie to you every single day. They will flatter your ego, laugh at your terrible jokes, and validate your suboptimal ideas out of a basic desire for career survival. If you want the absolute truth about your character, you cannot rely on casual office conversations. You must actively pull the truth out of your environment through structured, anonymous, and comprehensive feedback mechanisms. You must ask your peers, your direct reports, and your customers to grade your behavioral habits with total, unvarnished candor. When you gather this data, you must look at the recurring patterns with total intellectual honesty, refusing to rationalize away the negative marks as the complaints of jealous or sensitive people. If one person tells you that you are an arrogant listener, you can potentially dismiss it as a personality clash. But if 10 people across different departments independently report that you are an arrogant listener, you must accept that reality as an objective fact of your current reputation. The feedback loop functions exactly like a corporate mirror. It does not matter how beautiful or noble you feel on the inside. What matters is the exact reflection that is hitting the eyes of your team. By embracing that reflection with humility and treating every piece of criticism as a blueprint for your future self, you dismantle the isolation of power and align your behavior with the needs of your organization. The traditional corporate world is completely obsessed with the concept of feedback, spending millions of dollars on annual performance reviews that force employees to look backward, dissect past failures, and relive ancient organizational arguments. While analyzing the past can be useful for diagnostic purposes, it carries a heavy emotional burden. It often makes people feel defensive, guilty, and permanently judged for mistakes they can no longer alter. To completely bypass this psychological friction and accelerate forward momentum, Marshall Goldsmith created a brilliant, highly optimistic alternative mechanism that has completely redefined the landscape of executive coaching, a concept known as feed forward. Feed forward is the simple practice of asking the people around you for positive, actionable suggestions for your future behavior, completely banning any discussion of past events. Instead of asking a colleague for feedback on how you managed a meeting last month, you step into their office and say, "I want to become a much more focused, attentive listener in our executive sessions over the next quarter. What are 2 specific things I can do to achieve this goal?" The beauty of Feed Forward is that it focuses entirely on solutions rather than problems. Because the future is a clean slate filled with infinite potential, people feel incredibly comfortable offering constructive, practical advice when they are not burdened by the negative emotions of past conflicts. It transforms the interaction from an awkward trial into a creative, collaborative brainstorming session for your future success. However, gathering magnificent suggestions through Feed Forward is still only half the battle. The true, definitive engine of lifelong behavioral change is a relentless, unyielding process of continuous following up. Many executives attend high-energy leadership retreats, fill their notebooks with grand resolutions to change their character, and then return to the daily chaos of emails and crises, slowly slipping back into their decades-old habits within a single business week. They fail because they treat personal growth as a singular event rather than a continuous, daily operational system. Following up is the mechanical glue that ensures your new habits stick permanently to your character. Every few weeks, you must systematically return to the people who gave you feed-forward advice and ask them to evaluate your recent progress, forcing a continuous loop of accountability that keeps your behavioral goals at the absolute front of your conscious mind. To solidify this discipline, Goldsmith advocates for a rigid ritual of daily self-interrogation, measuring your personal growth through the use of active questions. Every single evening, you must sit down with a checklist and ask yourself a series of tough questions that begin with the exact phrase, "Did I do my best to?" Did I do my best to build a positive relationship with my team today? Did I do my best to avoid adding useless value to conversations? Did I do my best to find meaning in my work? By phrasing the questions around your personal effort rather than your objective results, you eliminate all your favorite excuses. You cannot blame the economy, the board, or a difficult client for your lack of effort. Your effort belongs entirely to you. Ultimately, jumping higher than your own head is a journey of profound personal accountability that forces you to redefine your relationship with success. You must realize that your worth as a leader is no longer measured by your individual technical brilliance, your personal track record, or your ability to dominate a room. Your value is measured entirely by your ability to empower, inspire, and elevate the human beings around you. By letting go of your need to be right, stepping into the vulnerability of a real apology, gathering future-oriented feed forward, and measuring your daily effort with total intellectual honesty, you break through the invisible glass ceiling of your own past success. You transform from a brilliant individual producer into a truly legendary, timeless leader, capable of building an empire of trust, innovation, and sustained institutional greatness.